Good afternoon. Hello. Welcome to this high-level discussion, cybersecurity of critical infrastructure, how to protect our most valuable assets. I am, as earlier said, Karolina Zbytniewska, editor-in-chief at EURACTIV Poland, and I will have a great pleasure to chair this debate with our already introduced all-star panel. Cyber attacks are commonplace and pose a real threat not only to businesses but also to national and European security. To address this concern, the European Commission created the Network and Information Security Directive. Now its revision is on the table. I would like to ask Lorena Alonso, what obstacles can the EU face when it comes to cybersecurity breaches? Does strengthening the original NIS directive addresses all these challenges? And what solutions is the European Commission discussing beyond the directive in the face of the increased cyber attacks? So I'm being informed that I shall start with our next speaker, Lise Fuhr. I would like to ask you about ETNO's recommendations and opinions that you shared with the European Commission as regards the NIS2 directive. For example, back in December, you released a statement urging the legislators behind NIS2 to rethink their position on ICT service providers in the light of the supply chain security crisis that we are facing right now. Could you please elaborate on that and suggest maybe what other initiatives would help increase the overall resilience of the EU cybersecurity ecosystem?
Thank you, Karolina, and thank you for inviting ETNO to speak at this extremely important event. And apologies for not being able to stay for the whole session. I have another also very important meeting I need to attend. But if we look at telecom companies and our networks, they are the backbone of our society, and we've seen with the current pandemic, it has accelerated our dependency on digital technology. So we see our telecommunication are both a lifeline and an enabler for a modern society. It is a truly critical infrastructure. And we've seen our networks are, of course, a big target for cyber attacks because they control, and our companies have been under attack because of representing critical infrastructure, because we have a lot of communication and huge amount of data. So one of the key missions for operators are therefore to ensure that our network and our digital assets are resilient, so all citizens, consumers, businesses, governments can enjoy what we see as a trusted and secure communications. And we as telcos have done this for decades now. And with 5G, it will be even more, we need to be even more vigilant as our networks will undergo a deep virtualization and softwareization to become the platform that are supporting all the verticals and the broader digital ecosystem. And also with 5G and its virtualized infrastructure, more functions will move closer to the user, and it will actually be outsourced more to the suppliers. Therefore, we as the telecom sector, we are preparing for major changes in the supply chain landscape with implications, of course, also for cybersecurity. So we see a deeper interdependence of telecom providers and third parties like suppliers of hardware and software in the 5G architecture, and this will increase the level of risk. So risk management in the supply chain is by now a very defining issue not only for us as a telecom industry, but also for other critical sectors like health, energy, banking, education, and governments. And this goes back to your question on the NIS2 directive and also ETNO's call to fill the gaps in the security of the critical ICT supply chain. So where the NIS directive, the NIS2 proposal puts greater emphasis on the assessment and management of supply chain risks, and this is actually a good step from our point of view. I see the proposal fails to tackle the issue at its very core. Those closest to the problem should also be the closest to the solution. So as telcos and all organizations in every sector are increasingly depending on software and managed ICT services, the role of the providers of these services in keeping digital infrastructure resilient has become even more essential. And we see that they are often best placed to manage their own vulnerabilities and to address cyber threats in the first place. So what we see and what we think is, in the face of ever expanding global supply chains under the NIS2 rules, the regulated entities would still shoulder the lion's share of ensuring resilient networks and services and of providing supplier compliance. So this is why we as ETNO has called for a better allocation of responsibility of the risk management also along the supply chain. And if this too introduced risk management and reporting obligations directly upon critical ICT suppliers, the overall resilience of critical sectors in Europe would benefit greatly. So we are appreciating that some EU member states have taken a step in this direction by asking the NIS2 rules to apply to managed also service providers. And we support this proposal and hope that it's maintained in the final directive. And very quickly, looking beyond NIS2, there are many other initiatives that could bolster the cybersecurity here in Europe and of the whole European digital ecosystem. For example, we look forward to the Cyber Resilience Act that is keeping Lorena and her team extremely busy at the moment. While security of suppliers of the digital networks is one side of the coin, security of all the user products and devices that connect to these networks, we see them as the other side of the coin too. So the Cyber Resilience Act aims exactly to boost the cybersecurity of connected objects and IoT. And I believe if we as EU manage to square that circle and to set common cyber risk management standards for the whole telecom ecosystem, that's networks, that's IT, supply chains, that's connected devices, it can actually lead the way on cybersecurity for the rest of the world, like we did on GDPR. And I have one last, I know I take it a bit long here, but I would like to stress one last point on cybersecurity, and that is, I think cybersecurity is a key element of our digital sovereignty. I prefer to call it digital leadership. So if we look at it, on one hand, cybersecurity is a precondition of Europe's digital leadership plan. But you cannot have a successful digital ecosystem if it's not protected from cyber risk. So on the other hand, cybersecurity can be supported by digital leadership ambitions if they are translated into fostering a European cybersecurity market and homegrown capabilities here. So today we're looking, and we are mostly procuring much of this from the US and Asia. So the nexus between security and leadership should be at the core of the digital strategy of Europe's policymakers, our governments, and our companies. And last, we as telcos see Open RAN as an opportunity to accelerate innovation and strengthen EU leadership and future digital networks, while solving critical security vulnerabilities by actually diversifying the telecom vendor market. So that is why we believe that the European decision makers should facilitate the growth of a European Open RAN ecosystem by supporting innovation and standardization, funding research and development, and driving the global cooperation on exactly Open RAN with other countries. So just to conclude, and then I'll end.
Yes, please.
The whole digital ecosystem end to end, starting from suppliers up until the user device. Second, cybersecurity and digital sovereignty or leadership are mutually necessary and mutually reinforcing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lise Fuhr had a little bit more time because she has to leave, as said before. So I'm coming back to Lorena Alonso and to the question about obstacles that EU faces when it comes to cybersecurity breaches and how the NIS directive and the general legal framework of the European Union faces these challenges and what beyond the NIS directive is being done in the face of cyber attacks. And if you want also to address any of the concerns of Lise Fuhr, please do so. And please also, if you could stick to around into 5 minutes, I will be grateful, and then we'll have time for more than one question.
Yeah, apologies. At the moment I was going to talk, my connection broke. But the good thing is that I will be able to react to some of Lisa's comments. So what are the challenges, and what were the challenges of the current NIS 1 directive? I think is the challenges that we are living every day, an impressive increase of cyber attacks that now are touching basically every sector. Sectors that we thought, oh, well, this will not happen. Now, this has never happened. It's something that when someone tells me, I say, well, wait and see. So not only the number of attacks have increased, the number of sectors, but also the nature of the attacks, of course, is adapting as well. It has been very rightly mentioned, the increase of supply chain attacks, often exploiting vulnerabilities, often via software. According to ENISA, this has multiplied by 4 in 2021. This means that in the NIS 2 directive, we have therefore proposed an increase of the number of sectors to be covered. As rightly mentioned by Lise, some of the co-legislators are even proposing new sectors, and that comes both from Parliament and from Council. Another shortcoming of the current directive is the system of identification, the fact that member states have all to decide who is and who is not covered. This is something we are fixing as well with the NIS 2 directive. The fact that if you are among the sectors, then you are covered, of course, with a size cap limitation. The fact that management should be more involved in being responsible of what is happening in a company, and also in enforcement measures that were really going for basically doing very little against a company that is not respecting the cybersecurity measure to a very high fine. So all this is being fixed. But of course, this is not the only thing. As rightly mentioned by you and by Lise, there are the European Union has a number of instruments to cover with all the cybersecurity problem. Some of them are legislative, others are not. As you know, we have the 5G toolbox. I just come from a conference where I was in a panel only discussing about the 5G toolbox. It's a very important element. We have certification, so the Cybersecurity Act, which is already ongoing, and EU certification schemes are being prepared. And this is extremely important. And we have also a number of measures that are more into the investments, like the cyber competence centers, and how these investments should go. Something quite important as well among measures that are not cybersecurity, that are not legislative, for example, is the proposed reinforcement of SOCs, so that they are reinforced, and also that we have networking of different SOCs at EU level, or at least regional level. And this is something that on which we are working. We are going to have a number of call for proposals to reinforce, but also call for expression of interest to host security operating centers. So this is something we are really engaging. Rightly mentioned the Cyber Resilience Act. This is very important also in the context of supply chain attacks. As mentioned, NIS 2 introduces a number of measures, like asking companies to take into account in their cybersecurity risk management measures with whom they are dealing, to member states also to do coordinated supply chain risk assessment. But of course, it's very important to cover also, as rightly mentioned by Lise, those that are sometimes at the origin of where the problem is. And this is why the Cyber Resilience Act, that intends to cover all product and associated services of software, that's what we are analyzing, could very likely be in, so that they are subject to a number of cybersecurity measures. And then we will need to see what's the best way to demonstrate conformity with those measures. We will see the link also with potential certification, at least in certain sectors. And just to finish, because you asked me to react also, Open RAN, indeed. Open RAN is a development. It's really at the very, very, very early stages. And the Commission is indeed supporting with research funding. But of course, as we are doing in the current toolbox, any new technology or development that touches upon security and networks needs to be very secure. So this is why right now, in the context of the toolbox process, we are analyzing together with member states, we are doing a coordinated risk assessment of Open RAN as well. We are in the middle of this exercise, and we will come with an outcome as soon as we can. So voila, to conclude with this, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Ludmila Georgieva, how do you see the improvements offered in the NIS 2 directive? And as an international company, how do you view the different implementation of the regulations in different EU member states? Plus, Google, along with some other companies, may provide important and essential services at the same time and be subject to different supervisory regimes. How do you find that?
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you also for having me today. Indeed, the NIS 1 and the NIS 2 have been, the NIS 1 was the first EU cybersecurity law in 2016, of a milestone in the cybersecurity legal architecture in Europe. But let me, maybe what we agree with Ms. Fuhr is cybersecurity is a cornerstone of digitalization. Cybersecurity is a precondition of digitalization. But for me, it's very important, and for us, and Google, it's important to make clear that cybersecurity is a process. It's not a static condition. It's a constant improvement, innovation, management, and also the right processes to have in place for notification and security escalation. All these elements are key to success. And each legislation needs to strike the right balance between minimum requirements, risk-based approach, a voluntary approach, also foresee some incentives towards cybersecurity innovation and future-proof legislation. I think this is where we talk about cybersecurity is also a shared responsibility. It's something that each company and each individual can do, but we also have to contribute for the bigger ecosystem. We as Google for a while now we've been using the zero trust security model for our whole supply chain, and security by default is something that we do is at heart for everything what we do. But cybersecurity is also, as I said, shared responsibility, and it's a team game, and there is no final whistle at the end. That's why we've been actually over the years trying to contribute not only for Google users, but for the whole of the internet by developing significant and pretty cool things like the Android private computing, Play Protect, safe browsing, which is used across several browsers, not only with Google. We've been working on a zero trust architecture. We've been working on the kind of our HTTPS format. We have threat intelligence. We also have a threat analysis group. VirusTotal is a well-known provider that actually supports the ecosystem as well. So these are quite a lot of elements that we're actually trying to do in any case. We have, and this is also possible for us because of our global scale, because of our sound architecture, and the controls we have in place. And also our commitment to improve the security of the internet for all users, not only for Google users. This is why we can actually say that for us, cybersecurity is a fundamental part of our business across all products and services. And it is also, as I said, it's a team play. So we really proactively work with a lot of stakeholders across the ecosystem, really to improve cybersecurity as a process. We work with academia, government, and civil society. In the case of essential services, indeed, we have services which will be identified as essential. We have services which will be identified as important. This is the reason why talking about entities is very difficult, in particular that if you have only a big entity, not our case, which is have one service that will fall as essential and all the rest is important or even not even important. So maybe talking about services will be probably the correcter definition. But what is key, I think what is important to keep in mind is that while essential entities designation is new, the expectations regarding security, and I think Lorena and Lise touched on this, is that actually the part of cloud providers, the expectations from our customers, from regulators, from policymakers are not new. It's not much that the regulations, but the needs of our customers that and our users that are actually driving our considerable investments in information security. To give you an example, Google Cloud has some of its largest customers in heavily regulated industries like financial services, telecommunications, that themselves are actually essential entities. So in many cases, what our customers are asking us in terms of security is far exceeding the baseline by regulatory compliance needs. So for me, I think it's helpful to frame the question more in terms of capabilities than in terms of designations. We're striving to make our products, in particular Google Cloud, the most secure and trusted platform. And we're doing this by making advanced security features really available to all customers of all sizes. It doesn't matter if you're Shell or Deutsche Bank. You can really use the advantage of phishing protection, malware protection, zero trust architecture, security orchestration and automation, and of course end-to-end encryption, which is in an encryption in transit. So this is, I think, the kinds of capabilities we are making available for everyone, and I think this is important. I think cybersecurity, as I said at the beginning, legislation is important to have a kind of a minimum standard, but it should be also very flexible, so it doesn't prevent innovation. And also the question of time frames, how to report, should be reasonable. It doesn't make sense for not for public for the administration or for the authorities to receive reports for any kind of a cyber threat, and it doesn't really make sense for companies to report any kind of a cyber threat that might potentially really end up something bigger. So the question of quantity versus quality, but also what is reasonable and feasible needs really to be the balance here. I'll make a stop here, and if you have any questions, happy to deep dive on this.
Thank you very much. So now the question to Dawid Bastiat-Jarosz. What is the importance of critical infrastructure and its protection for maintaining the integrity and ensuring the development of corporations present in several markets?
Thank you so much, Karolina. Can you just confirm that you can hear me okay? Yeah?
Yes, I do. Yes, I can.
Good.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, let me start by thanking the organizer for setting up such a great panel. I already learned a lot, and also thank you to DGCNet for leadership in this difficult topic. So, the importance of infrastructure cannot be really overestimated here. Like Orlen as a corporation is present in many markets and is an operator of services in Poland, Czech Republic, Lithuania. And although national regulations are based on the EU law, the practical aspects of their implementation in individual countries differ. And there's a different approach to defining essential services across these markets, for example. So as inside the Orlen Group, and as Orlen Group, we have a central approach to cybersecurity management. So we implement uniform standards, and we're trying to build an international team that will address those challenges. Hence, if the regulatory approach were also consistent, it would be just much easier for us to apply this path. And the similar case is with reporting accidents. We're doing it individually across different legislations. So in this regional context, as I said before, we would appreciate the harmonization of regulation and how it is interpreted across the legislative systems. And this is where NIS2 directive really offers a lot of hope. So from our position, the directive itself is more of an evolution rather than revolution, especially in its scope, how different it is. So from the point of view of the differences in approach between the countries, NIS2 indeed extends the tasks of units responsible for international cooperation, including precisely to harmonize the ways in which the different member states implement the directive recommendations. So this is definitely a good thing. More precise reporting will also certainly help. I mean, interesting motivation for entities will also be adding responsibility of the management board and some financial sanctions for not complying. I mean, as we saw in the case of GDPR, this negative motivation can be quite effective. Also, extending the scope of entities covered by the regulation will, we believe, enlarge the market for all types of cybersecurity support services. So the whole industry will thus become more mature and more standardized. We're already seeing that certain types of cybersecurity services are much cheaper than they were 2-3 years ago, which is a good news for the systematic level of safety, but also for smaller players like SMEs. So, the more common and standard-based language that regulators, producers, and consumers of technology will talk, the better for everyone. This is what we believe. Karolina?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask Mr. Sebastian Pelowski, How has the Polish oil mining and gas extraction reacted to cyber attacks that we observed in the last 2 years, such as the Colonial Pipeline attack, for example? Have you introduced any extra measures to make sure this doesn't happen within your company?
Okay, first of all, thank you for such a good question. This is my favorite approach. We are investing as much as we can in people. The attack like the Colonial Pipeline, or closer to Poland, the last attack on Ukraine in 2022, showed us that as the defenders, we are still surprised by the creativity of cyber criminals. They even made a new business model, cyber attack as a service, where you can buy a cyber crime services. But valuable for us in Polish oil and gas company is that our employees can think out of the box. And it's something that technology right now isn't able to give you. It's always said that the weakest point is the human being. That's why we are training our employees, starting from the IT staff, regular users, but as well as senior management. And we are training them in cyber hygiene. As at Polish oil and gas company, we are building our capabilities in all new trends of offensive and defensive techniques. We are using all the possibilities to train our staff. We use vendors teaching programs. We use group and individual trainings. We use conferences with its super panel networking. It's important from our point of view to have information from as many internal and external sources as we can get. This gives us a possibility to be able to correlate different events in such way to be able to catch undesirable actions. The next area which we are improving right now is OSINT. We have built a strong team of professionals who helps our SOC and CERT team in the day-to-day work. Of course, our systems are only as strong as their weakest points. We strive to have full visibility of our assets because we can only protect what we can see. That's the actions what we are taking in Polish oil and gas company, which I can publicly can talk about. And as you asked about the extra measures, well, from my point of view, there is currently no need to add additional measures. As a cybersecurity, we have all the frameworks and tools we need. For example, we have the ISO framework, the NIST recommendation, the NIST directive, and the problem is not any additional measures and safeguards, but the good implementation of existing tools and recommendations. In many cases, compromising the user, the system, or the whole organization is related to the lack or the incorrect implementation of the security safeguard. I do not hide that the selection of the safeguards at Polish oil and gas company is based on the results of the risk management process. Based on that results, we select different countermeasures. Let's take, for example, multi-factor authentication. This is a security safeguard that must have to be implemented to all systems that are critical assets to our business. So another key change for our organization that we have fully implemented in recent years is security by design approach in projects. We have talked many hours with our business colleagues to talk over that area. And after that, we together work out solutions that from the very beginning of any project in ICT or operation technology area, we take in actions, we take in into account the security requirements, which have an impact on the lowering the final cost of the projects. For example, by reducing iterations due to error detected during security tests. So that's our
I think we need to end the first round, but still you have mentioned a lot of important measures taken by your company. Thank you for that. And I would like to come back in a way with the Colonial Pipeline question to Lorena. And I would like hereby to start the second round. We have just 8 minutes. So I would like to ask everyone to provide answers that will be shorter than 2 minutes. Thank you in advance. Lorena, last year's Colonial Pipeline hack caused the 6-day shutdown that exposed the vulnerability of critical infrastructure of the biggest economy in the world. It was a ransom attack on the biggest on the US. Would it happen in Europe? How we are prepared as Europe, and how our legislative framework makes us ready to such similar hybrid and cyber attacks?
Okay, so for a ransomware attack, well, something we have already is what we have mentioned, which is the NIS directive, and that now will be the NIS directive, which covers security measures to be taken, among which the need to notify to the authorities when there is an incident. So at least you have this already, how we have a legislative framework that not only imposes a number of measures to be taken, but among them is the need to notify that we are trying to shorten the period and that it's 24 hours. And here I'm going to react to the colleague Ludmila from Google saying, well, do we have the capacity? I would imagine that Google certainly has. But just to mention that what we refer to in the NIS 2 proposal is to a quick notification, not a full report that then comes within 1 month, and that of course requires much more time. So just to make the authorities aware that this is happening. Then, of course, in the context of ransomware, we are very much also cooperating with our international partners. We have replied to the call, for example, from the US to have a multilateral engagement on this matter, and we have also a bilateral dialogue with the US on this matter. So I think that we are, in a way, at least through a number of indirect measures, trying to cover this matter. I could go on and on, but you said to be short, so I'll leave it here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ludmila. You mentioned you focused in the first round on the team play that cybersecurity is, and now I would like to ask you about, for example, the sanctions that are proposed in the NIS directive. Would they more strengthen the cybersecurity, or maybe the opposite? How the EU legal framework works on your their own activities? Do they only make your life as a company, international company, easier, or do they also curb your possibilities of doing business?
Thank you, Karolina. That's a very interesting question. I would say we will do security the way we've done in the past. We will continue to do it. So it's something that if you're doing security as we are doing it for our users, for business customers, we don't need a kind of a negative incentive like this one to make it more proper, because it's one of the best in class. So for us, actually, fines, I would say, are the last resort, really, for someone who is, and I think that most of the companies in the ecosystem is actually very keen to do stuff, but sometimes, as I said, capabilities are maybe lacking. That's why we actually try to maybe counterbalance this, and to where we'll launch this year, we will open a cybersecurity center in Malaga. It's called Google Safety Engineering Center, focused on cybersecurity, where we would like to offer exactly this kind of trainings on cybersecurity, and where also our newly established Google Cyber Action Team, GCAT, easy to remember, will actually support security and digital transformation of government, critical infrastructure, enterprises, and small businesses. So I think that fines are, as I said, I'm more a fan of positive incentives where you can actually create possibility and innovation can flourish. But fines, if necessary, I think they should be the last resort. As I said, for us, it doesn't really make a difference, because we've been already having quite a robust and strong security mechanism and system in place. I hope I was.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you for that as well, also for the answer. Mr. Dawid Bastiat-Jarosz, I would like to ask you, what are the main threats and challenges in cyberspace in relation to the fuel infrastructure in Poland, in Europe, and how does the EU legal framework address these threats and challenges? In your view, 2 minutes, please.
Thanks, Karolina. I'll do my best. Thanks. Let me start with thanking Lorena for the leadership in response to the accidents affecting the pipelines. We use a lot of those, so that's a good news. But Karolina, going back to your question, in addition to the obvious threats that we see every day, there's also a certain important trend that we have noticed that has been exacerbated by the pandemic, really, and those are all the risks that are resulting from a significant increase in usage of electronic forms of communication, basically, right? My colleague from PGNiG spoke about it a little bit. So remote work, remote access to systems, and the increasing number of cloud tools make business dependent on technology. And also in terms of how much this technology guards access to sensitive resources. So this aspect of verifying who actually connects to us is very, very interesting. And of course, on top of this, you have the employee mobility, which is also imposed by the post-pandemic changed labor market. And it causes a lot of these remote access scenarios to be created. So as a result, the complexity of the security architecture grows. And just to round it up, the remote user is exposed to a growing number of different types of attacks, and digital identity is increasingly under threat. So we devote a lot of attention to the issue of education and awareness and of these threats. And just to the one final issue that we have noticed, here we're giving a nod to the expected certification, is the protection of the supply chain, right? And in two dimensions. Firstly, it's resistance to manipulation, so physical access to devices during transport. But an interesting aspect that we're dealing with right now is the issue of device availability, right? You can have standards, plans, and budgets, but if you cannot buy a certain equipment, you can't do much. So with this thought, I'd like to finish. Thank you, Karolina.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Sebastian Pelowski, We've seen, and everybody almost mentioned that, the increasing number of cyber attacks. And I would like to ask you how these directives affect your functioning, and what more would you like to expect from the European Union as regards safeguarding the cybersecurity? Mr. Pelowski?
Sorry. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Did you hear my question?
Yes. I heard.
Good. So please, up to 2 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you in advance.
I will try it. It's certainly NIS directive has rearranged many areas. Among other things, it raises awareness of cybersecurity for the organizations. And it all depends, of course, on the implementation of the NIS directive in individual countries and even going further down in individual sectors. It all depends on the implementation of legal, technological, and organization solutions, and of course, consistency in actions. Since 2009, in Polish oil and gas company, we are maintaining our information security management system based on the ISO 27000. So the NIS directive showed us that the road which we are taking almost 20 years ago was a very good choice. One thing which bothers me in this holistic solutions, is that there is no cybersecurity governance shown in the NIS2 directive. As you know, there are three popular models of functioning chief information security and its office in organizations. And in my opinion, the one thing which is missed in this NIS2 directive should be the development of security governance in average company. Maybe we should think about some solutions that were developed in the general data protection regulatory and implement this in the cyber security. Thanks, Karolina.
Thank you very much. It is great that the EU offers its leadership in tackling the cybersecurity threats, but it all requires also our teamwork or a holistic approach, as Sebastian Pelowski said, as well as the actions on the level of individual companies and institutions. Our discussion hereby has come to an end. Our guests were Lorena Alonso, Lise Fuhr, Ludmila Georgieva, Dawid Bastiat-Jarosz, and Sebastian Pelowski. Thank you very much again and have a great evening.